Okay, if we get out the safety briefing and values moment, I think John's doing it.
Good morning. I'm John Scambatura. I've been with JEA for 22 years, and I'm the Director of Wastewater and Reuse Treatment. We are a team of 180 members where we convey and treat 80 million gallons of wastewater and produce 14 million gallons of public access reuse. For those attending the meeting in person, the safety protocol is on the screen and in your materials. It's my privilege to provide the values moment of respect. During the month of December, all one has to do is to go outside to notice that it's the holiday season in the United States. However, while 71% of Americans identify themselves as Christian, Christmas and other Christian-related holidays are not the only celebrations during the month. It's important to remember, especially in the workplace, that while the majority of employees may celebrate the Christian holidays, all celebrations are not the same. In fact, employees of JEA could partake in the following December events and celebrations. When it comes to respecting all holidays in the workplace, it's important for leaders to understand the unique types of holidays and events during the season. Recognize some may choose to schedule different times off to partake in celebrations. An exclusive employer is empathetic and courteous. No matter who, what, where, when, or why we celebrate, the key is that we should be aware and recognize our unique differences. The JEA culture is one of inclusivity, and no matter how we celebrate, we should respect how we choose to enjoy our celebrations. We should strive for all employees to feel a sense of belonging, regardless of how we celebrate the seasons. Labeling the company's celebration as Christmas, Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa party may not feel inclusive to some individuals who do not celebrate those holidays. Be open to sharing and learning about aspects of different December holidays in a party is a good way to expose individuals to customs they have not experienced before. Whatever we do, make sure everyone feels they can belong. It's all about treating each other with courtesy and respect.
Great, thank you, John, appreciate it. Okay, and I think now we have comments from the public, and I believe Logan Cross has a comment to make.
Yes, my name is Logan Cross. I'm a member of the JEA Stakeholder Advisory Committee for its Integrated Resource Plan. And I'll have to say, serving on that committee has been a very excellent educational experience for me because I've learned a lot more about the many challenges JEA faces in terms of meeting the demands of its customers, but also the challenges of just meeting its fuel needs and everything. So I'm here to learn even more about the dynamics of JEA and how it meets the challenges it faces. But I also want to learn more about, and I think there's no need in me repeating the things that I'm advocating for. Yes, I'm advocating for JEA transitioning to renewable energy sources and divesting itself from fossil fuels and dependence on that. So I won't go over that again, but I do want to know a little bit more as to why JEA is having so much difficulty making this transition to renewable energies when many other utilities are accepting that challenge and making that transition. So thank you very much for allowing me to come here and speak to you. Thanks.
Okay, next, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the Finance and Operations Committee minutes from the meeting that was 9 September 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. And on here, I don't think we have a quorum.
No quorum.
Okay, so we'll just defer that to the next board meeting.
You got it.
Great. Okay, next up, I believe is Russell with the FY 21-22 financial review.
Thank you, Chair DeSalvo. My name is Russell Caffey. I am the controller here at JEA. I've been here for a little over 3 years now. My group consists of 3 teams We are the project accounting team, the financial accounting and reporting team, and the tax department. All right, on the screen, you'll see we have 5 identified metrics that we've targeted to keep us in line with our peers and achieve financial rating agency outcomes. The first one on the top left is our liquidity metric. Our target for our pricing policy is 150 days of liquidity. Oh, and on this, I'm gonna explain these a little bit since it's the first time you've been seeing them, and we'll start seeing them every quarter. The first metric, more is better. So the target is 150 days per our pricing policy, and we are sitting at 265 days at year end. Our next, the next chart over is our debt service coverage ratio. More is better. This metric demonstrates our ability to repay 100% of our debts at our current operating levels. Our current ratio, our target ratio is 2.2, and at the end of the year, we are at 5.55. The next chart over is our debt to asset ratio. This one is lower is better. This chart is this chart just shows you how much of our assets, of the company's assets, we have purchased through financing, and we are right in line. We're a little over at the end of the year, but we are right in line with our target. As you move your eyes down to the bottom left, we have our fixed charge coverage. This shows how well we can pay our fixed expenses, including mandatory debt and interest, at our current operating expenses. Sorry, I didn't time right. We have 1.6 as our target, and we're sitting at 4.45 at the end of the year. And as you move your eyes to the last one, the last chart, that's our weighted average yield of investments. The end of the year, we were at 1.07. For this one, more is better, but our target is the 2-year treasury rate, and there's been a lot of volatility this year. Just as an example, yesterday the rate was 4.23 when I checked it. So it's increased a lot. It used to be at one point it was at 0.575. So this is a very volatile moving target.
Okay.
The next chart is our fuel and purchase power. The top section is our fuel fund, and this includes our cost plus some regulatory deferrals like hedging losses and gains. And the bottom section is going to be, will also include purchase power expenses that don't run through the fuel fund, and that includes equity and T, interchange sales, and bad debt. If you look at the change from last year to this year in the fuel fund, it increased 58%, and our GAAP fuel costs increased 60%. We're all aware of that. Next slide is our electric sales. Sales are up 2% when compared to FY22, and we had an increase in our customer base of 1.9%, so it's right in line. And we outperformed our budget by 2.2%. The next slide is our electric O&M. For FY22, we were 35 million less than budget and 18 million higher than prior year. The spending went up a couple different drivers. We had an increase in salary and benefits, 4 million increase in legal and professional, and an increase of $1 million in overhead. For electric capital, we're continuing to get our actuals more in line with our budget, and our capital spend increased 36 million compared to last year, and we were still 53 million below budget. Now we're switching to water. These are the same metrics. Some of the targets are different because of the industry, and we'll run through those again. The first one is Our liquidity, our days liquidity, the target's 100 days instead of 150 days, and we ended the year at 384. Our debt service, our target's 1.8, and we were well above that at 6.65. As you move to the last on the top right, our debt to asset ratio is a little better in water because this is the one where lower is better. And our target's 50, and we're at 37.4%. On the bottom left, we have our fixed charge coverage. We don't have a pricing policy target for this one, but for internal modeling, we use 2%, and we were well above that. And the bottom right, our weighted average yield investments is the same as electric. We haven't broken that out yet. We're working on that for the next meeting to have it broken out different way if possible. Water system sales. If you move your eyes over to the, I think, fourth column where it's FY21 or verse FY21, and it goes, all of our increases were in line with our increase in number of accounts. So that's what we like to see in sales. And for O&M, on the water side, our spending increased 22 million over FY21 and still stayed 8.2 under budget. Our increases were 7 million in compensation and benefits, 7 million in overhead, 6 in maintenance, and 2 million in professional services. And last is our capital spend on the water side. Capital increased 100 million over prior year and stayed 60 million below budget. And like I said, there's been a concerted effort to get our spending in line with our budget over the past few years. I can take any potential questions.
Well, first thing, just a comment. I think this is great. And I like the fact we're doing a end of fiscal year 22 wrap up, because at least for me, this helps put things together. And we're going to do this quarterly. Is that the idea?
That was the plan, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great. For one, when we were talking O&M, and I asked Ted earlier, and this, I think this is good news too. We anticipate those expenses related to for the building, headquarters building, going down because brand new facility is going to be, everything's new or whatever, so more reliable. So I think that's good news on that one. The other one was, and Marty, you brought this up at the last board meeting, we had the FY22 budget amendment on it. So I was asking Ted on that one, and bottom line is, if I got it right, Ted, so this is going to the city council for resolution. And again, this is great for transparency just on for the amended budget based on what we did in FY22. So if I understand it right, they should be getting this in January. Was that the idea? City council?
Yeah, I guess so, since we're in the middle of December. So yes, sir. So and that it'll be just like a true up to show that this is where we are. And the big driver on that again was fuel costs, because fuel costs went up so much during FY22.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Great.
When is the next rating agency cycle? When it's coming up, and it's usually this time of year.
So we have the meetings planned in February. So are all three of them locked up now, Joe? Yes. So mid February we'll be having those meetings, and we'll be doing them virtually again. So
Perfect. And these are all metrics, as I recall, that they're really tracking against.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I think everything was, it's tracking the debt service is the one that just kind of jumps off the chart, but understanding how it's happened and so forth.
Yeah, so that electric number is 51. At one point in time, it was 90.
Yeah.
So very, very happy about where we are headed in that area. So it gives us some space as we look to grow, to issue some more debt, right?
Great. Okay. Thank you, Russell.
General, the two two things real quick. One is I want to be sure that y'all know that Tom Van Osdale is online. And because there's a couple of people that don't have their names on, we need to circle back around and just be sure there's no public comment from anybody online.
Okay.
So how do we circle around to do
Lyndon?
that?
We have Jerry Wetford
Okay.
with us today. Jerry,
Thank you.
inquire.
To the chair and to the TA boardroom, we have three callers that are external to the meeting. With that, I would briefly like to cover the WebEx technology. In today's meeting, we have enabled two ways for you to recognize public comments. The first is the chat option. If you will touch your screen or scroll next to the participant icon, you will notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on that, it will bring up a window. This will allow you to submit your comments in writing. The other option is the raise hand feature. Now located on the right-hand side, you will find an icon that looks like a person labeled participants. This option will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined the meeting. At the top of the list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you will notice a gray icon that looks like a hand. If you click it, it will turn blue, letting me know that you would like to be recognized for comment. With that, I will pause and see if anybody would like to raise their hand for comment. To the chair, I do not see anyone raising their hands for comments. Back to you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate it. Okay, next one we'll cover the electric cost of service and rates, and this is for action. I think Victor is doing this one.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays to the committee. I'm back again. Victor Blackshirt, Director of Financial Planning and Rates. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge some of my team members here today. I have Scott Schlossman, our Manager of Rates, and Alyssa Peterson over here. She's a Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis of my dynamic duo. They're really the driving force behind the efforts that you're going to see today.
Great.
So with that being said, let's get into our cost of service. So as a recap, the cost of service process, it pretty much starts with taking our financial plan and solidifying our financial plan and then breaking it down into cost buckets by function: generation, transmission, distribution, etc. Once we break it down by functions, then we assign those costs by our commercial or by our rate classes, which are residential, small commercial, large commercial, industrial. And it's at that point, once we have all our costs allocated by rate classes, is then we can start looking into how do we properly price it to serve these customers, which is also known as our rate design. So in our cost of service study, we see here that, well, let me back up first. Our cost of service actually looks long-term, but for intents and purposes of today, our focus is going to be on FY23. And when we look into the cost of service for FY23, what was uncovered is we had a revenue deficiency for this year. That you can see on the far left column where it says total systems. This is where it reveals that we had a revenue deficiency coming without any rate increases or any rate adjustments. This is where we land. When we peel back the onion a little bit and dig a little deeper to look at it at the class levels, we see that we're really under recovering from two different classes: our residential class and our interruptible service extra large demand classes. Our residential class, we're under recovering by 8%, and you can see also that we're under recovering with the IXXLV class as well. And it's at this point where we can really start looking into what will it take from a rate study standpoint. So the goals of the rate study is pretty straightforward. It's to achieve our targeted revenues by adjusting our rates and revising our tariffs. And again, I would like to repeat that we look at the latest information that we have available to us, financials and corporate information. So again, just like the cost of service side of the study, we're going to focus in on FY23 for the rate side of the study as well. So the rate study results calls for really adjusting our basic monthly charge. And our basic monthly charge is designed to recover our customer-related costs, such as billing, call center, meter reading, those type of costs, and to align it closer to its unit cost of service. So the recommendations coming out of the study was, well, to achieve our target revenues in FY23, we'd like to raise the residential rates by under 3%. But also adjust the basic monthly charges and energy charges, again, for better alignment for our commercial and industrial customers. And if you look to the far right of the chart, you can see here, we're also recommending a delay, even though we know we're under recovery right now on the IXXLD. We want to delay any changes until we evaluate an alternative rate structure for that customer, which is called real-time pricing. Real-time pricing is a rate structure where the rates change or fluctuates every hour based off of the units or based off of our utilities production cost. So it's a different rate structure. We're looking into it and we're hoping to have a resolution on this. Is this a good fit for the customer in the next couple of months? But now that we have the insight in terms of what we want to achieve based on the residential customers, let's take a little deeper dive to see what it looks like at the bill component levels. So here you can see the residential rate recommendations is where we're recommending to raise the basic monthly charge by $9.50, but partially offsetting that increase by lowering the energy charge. By handling these shifts in our residential revenues, we're able to achieve our fiscal year 23 target revenues. To look at it from a bill presentment standpoint, I want to take one step back briefly and call your attention to the fuel charge line, because I know in recent months, over the past months, it's been fluctuating up and down. Mm-hmm. And also in your package, I believe it's on page 56, you'll also see another chart that just kind of shows what our bills look like from month to month over the past year. So our bills have been fluctuating, but it's been fluctuating because of the fuel charge, not because of the base charge. We actually haven't adjusted our base rates. The last time we've adjusted it was October 1st of 2021. And it was just the energy charge was the adjustment. So that was the last time we adjusted it. So here's the illustration so you can see what it looked like over the past year and what we're proposing that will look like for a customer that has 1,000 kWh bill.
To the chair, this was always planned when we had to deal with the fuel charge, right? And you couldn't really tell what was going on until you got the noise of the fuel out. Mm-hmm. And reminding everybody, it's what the fuel charge today is the way we intended it to be many years ago. But this was always planned that we would come back and look at the base.
What exactly is the energy charge?
The energy charge is for the residential customers. It gives us the venue to collect all of our costs for their class. So it really encompasses many of the costs: the transmission costs, the distribution costs, the customer service costs. So it's the rate component that allows us to collect the rest of the costs from our residential customers.
So that fluctuates on usage, but obviously. But
yes, it's a volumetric. Yes, sir. It's a volumetric rate.
But the basic monthly charge is not.
Yes, it's fixed. Correct.
And absent from this presentation was any discussion around cost saves or inspection around, what we spend. I know, Jay, we've talked about that in the past. I just want to make sure that as we move this forward, that we really do get laser focused on where we can save money, because obviously if we save money, we don't have to ask our ratepayers to pay for our expenses, right? So, I mean, you're continuing to do that, not on the O&M side, but on the just how we bill, and how we get it efficient.
On all the sides, yeah. It's one of the things that we have to be able to manage. Both the Victor answered that with the energy charge, that variable part is supposed to track with the things that are variable and take more time and more effort to go. And then the fixed charge is how we operate. And what we want to be able to do is develop a long range, and we're working on longer range financial planning to be able to manage both pieces of that. So it is O&M and how we do meter reading and how we do customer care things that are more fixed in nature.
And the other side of that coin is we're also looking at other revenue streams that can come in that can help offset some of these costs that you know. So if we save $1, that's $1 less that we need from a customer. If we can get another dollar in margin from another source, that's another dollar we don't have to ask from our customers. So we're looking at both sides of that income statement equation, the revenues and the expenses,
And-
right?
And as we move through this process, I would just ask that you articulate cases where we've been able to save money, because
Okay.
we've really missed that part of the dialogue. And I think it's really important for us to understand that and maybe the processes that you go through.
Be happy to do that.
Victor, I'm still hung up a little bit. 2 or 3 slides ago, revenue neutral. Just explain if you could. It's confusing me a little.
Looking for the fastest way to say this, the quickest one. So when we're doing cost of service, we really break it down on looking at what we call billing determinants. So to take a look at it from a holistic standpoint, with the commercial and industrial customers, we see how many kilowatt hours they use in a full span of time, let's say a full year,
Right.
as well as their demand. And we take all those billing determinants to figure out, okay, if our rates are priced for energy, for demand, for basic monthly charges, does it align with their cost? So when we change the rate structure, we still want to come out with the same amount of total revenues. We're just rearranging where we're collecting. So some we're collecting more from the fixed portion of the revenue,
Right.
and the rest we're collecting from the variable revenues. But when you take it as a whole, all the billing determinants, we're
Right.
trying to be neutral.
Okay.
So even though we're raising one and lowering the other, at the end of the day, the total is the same.
Okay.
But again, there's a little art there because we don't know what customers are going to behave, but that is the goal.
Sure.
And we don't know what our fuel costs are going to be.
Right.
So it works in the
Yes.
current fuel environment, but if fuel costs change, then
Right.
it changes.
And I think it deserves pointing out, so that basic monthly charge going to $15, I think the study recommended 23 for $23. So going from $5.50 to $23 is a really big step. But also think of that. So we have our basic monthly charge that's fixed. But once you take the fuel charge out, we have a lot of fixed costs, right? And we are still collecting that from variable revenues, and that creates risk. Right. That creates risk for us. So by moving more of our cost or more of the bill to that monthly charge, that reduces some of our risk based upon usage.
And when was the last time we raised the base?
October 1st,
Yeah, the base.
2021.
The basic monthly charge?
Basic monthly. I think it was
way
when I was on.
before,
Years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was-
I did that actually.
many years ago.
This is consistent with the way we think about water. We've moved the fixed basic monthly charge up on water 10 plus years ago.
And we'll inspect what we should be charging on a monthly basis every year go forward, or every 2
That's
years
the
go
goal.
forward.
Every year.
So think about your cell phone bill. So if you remember many years
Please don't,
ago.
my adult children.
Well,
Does anybody teach me how to get my adult 30-year-old children off my
your
phone?
phone. I'm the only one who knows.
Oh my- Okay, we'll talk later.
So,
Sorry.
so when cell phones first came out, you got so many minutes a month, right? And
That's how you get them off. Go back to that.
and the cell phone companies figured out, hey, most of our costs are fixed, right? So we will charge you X dollars, and you can talk all you want. And that seemed to work very well for both the customer and the phone companies. We're just trying to get a little bit closer to that.
Yeah, but you don't want to ever be in a position again to go wait 15 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I say you've got to
Yeah.
look at it more
Yes.
frequently.
Yes.
We had the exact same conversation 15 years ago because we hadn't raised rates in 20 years, I think, back then, whoever was here.
You're it.
Okay.
Pulling that thread a little bit more, the same you can see here for the commercial industrial rates as well. Again, where we're trying to get the basic monthly charge closer aligned with the unit cost of service for these commercial classes. And again, the initials here really just the representations of our rate classes. It's really for small commercial, large commercial, industrial classes. But again, the goal here is to stay net revenue neutral, but to solidify or lock in on some of our fixed costs. Fixed rates or fixed costs.
Mhm.
And that goes along with raising the rates. We also have to adjust our tariffs accordingly. But we took a real good hard look at our tariffs to see what things are outdated, needs to be aligned with our current operations. And we hope to really just do a revamp of the tariffs so it's easier to navigate in the future. So at the end of the day, it'll look more familiar with the current water and sewer tariffs and the DES tariffs. It's a better look and feel.
I thought that we, didn't we do something last year with an update on the tariff or something, or I'm just thinking something wrong?
Last year was the water sewer tariff.
Okay.
And then the past 6 months, we did one with the district energy tariff.
Okay.
So this is the last of the three that
Got
does that make them.
Okay.
So with that being said, the staff requests that the Finance and Operations Committee recommend the proposed changes to the board for approval.
And I think
With the rate hearing.
the calendar that's on the top of that, I think is important for, really, I think it's the timing of this allows this to be talked about. This isn't the first time we've talked about it. We won't talk about it again. We'll have the rate hearing. Because the recommendation, if it moves forward from committee to the board, is for the first phase of this to be effective April 1st, which we did to be able to be sure that we had plenty of time for the public to know what was happening and how it was going, and not to get lost in all the discussions that surround the October 1st budget and the process there. So by pushing it out to April 1st, I think it provides more clarity and transparency. And I appreciate the work that the team, well, the whole team, all of you, but the team that was working on this specifically did to get us to this point on this type of schedule.
Right. Great. Can I ask for a motion to bring this to the board?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay, we'll bring it to the board.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Victor.
Please listen when I talk about the expense side. Please, as we move forward into these hearings, we need to be showing what we're doing to save money.
Okay, next is the bond refunding delegation, Randall Barnes.
Good morning, committee, Chair Salvo. Nice to see you guys again. Again, my name is Randall Barnes. I'm the treasurer here at JEA.
You guys just say that.
Been here since August, so still relatively new here at JEA. But my team's responsible for all the financing here at JEA and also managing cash and investing and making payments. So really pleased to be here. The item we have for you today are bond refunding delegations for the calendar years 2023 through 2025. So this is actually 6 different resolutions that cover the 6 different liens that we have: senior subordinated electric, senior subordinated water and sewer, and then SJRPP, and also the DES. And so what we're trying to accomplish here is giving the managing director, CEO, and staff the ability to do a refunding transaction if the markets give us the right opportunity to do so. As you know,
That ain't happening.
Yeah.
I wish that ship sailed.
It doesn't seem extremely likely at this point, given the last year and the capital markets and the interest rates. But since 2012, JEA has issued 4.8 billion of refunding bonds with 569 million of net present value savings, which equates to about $42 million a year in annual debt service savings, which is really significant. And that's all under the my team has been responsible for that under the tutelage of the great Joe Orfano sitting over there for the most part.
So great. We now have
The great
to.
He's definitely a
You
legend.
need a motion?
But what we're asking for today is authorization for total refunding delegations over a 3-year period for 515 million of callable fixed rate bonds, 732 million of variable rate debt. And that's everything that's all the variable rate debt basically, and then all the callable fixed rate bonds that'll be callable within that 3-year time frame. And again, this doesn't mean we're going to go out and do a bunch of refunding. All that is contingent upon the right economic situations. There are definitely conservative refunding parameters in the resolutions that dictate how we can do refunding. For instance, there are PV value savings thresholds, weighted average life restrictions, redemption price maximums, and all these are consistent with the debt policy that's already been approved by the board. So we can only take action if the right circumstances are in place. But the whole purpose of this delegation is so that we can take advantage of opportunities when they occur, as opposed to having to wait for a board meeting to come around. And so time is sort of the essence. And when these things occur, and hopefully they will. You never know, because we've seen a quick change over the last year. So it could also always go the opposite direction and give us the chance to make a lot of savings. So we're requesting that you'll delegate to the managing director and CEO the ability to do bond refunding delegations for the calendar years 2023 through 2025.
And just what, so we've done delegation before, I assume, and to what level, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been similar. I think the last one was for 2 years.
Okay.
So it was a few years ago for the exact same format. So this is a continuing historical
Okay.
delegation.
Go back about 10 years.
Okay.
And prior to that point, every deal was brought before the board on a monthly basis. So it would have been possible to miss refunding opportunity because they had to go to the board.
Yeah.
So this allows staff to act more proactively.
Right. Okay.
And it's just refunding. It's not new issues. So
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. We still need to bring new issues to the board. This is just to take advantage of refunding opportunities.
Right. Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Approved. Great.
Thank you very much.
I have one more thing to throw a loop into it. First, John Baker has also joined, and we want to recognize him.
Great.
And it looks like we might have missed a raised hand for public comment. And we might need to go back and fix the raised hand for public comment. So Mark Zimmerman had raised his hand online and had public comment, I think.
Okay. Jerry, can you help us out here?
If Mark's unmuted, if he would go ahead and speak.
Jay, you can let it go. We're kind of past where I wanted to make the comment. I'll pick it up with Masha and Randy.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you.
Okay. Let's see, next I believe is supply chain transformer challenges. Kenny Pearson.
Hello.
Have you fixed it? Rumor has it, you're the man, Kenny.
There is one, I guess.
Don't shoot the messenger.
But my name is Kenny Pearson. I'm the procurement category manager that oversees inventory. So think of anything that sits in our warehouses, and also oversee the fleet and our investment recovery procurement. And I've been with the company about 5 years. And thank you all for allowing me to speak here today. Historically, JEA partners with numerous suppliers to provide the supply of transformers. By doing so, JEA has been able to leverage our strengths across many suppliers to provide us not only outstanding quality, but competitive pricing and consistent supply. As supply chain disruptions occurred in 2020, JEA felt the impact across many commodities, and we were able to overcome those through those partnerships. In 2021, as the supply chain issues became more widespread, but grew deeper with some, particularly with regards to transformer and the nationwide issues. On the supply side, we saw the lack of workforce, access to critical raw materials, and transportation issues. On the demand side, we saw record consumption of transformers due to new growth, storm hardening efforts for overhead to underground projects across the United States, and aging infrastructure. For single-phase pad mount transformers, which is the style in which JEA and the industry has seen the most growth, we've seen lead times grow from 3 to 4 months prior to 2021 to approximately 10 months in early 2021. And soon after, we saw the industry lead to approximately 16 months. Some manufacturers even pushed their lead times out to 22 months. To combat these issues, operation has paused some work, such as overhead to underground conversions to preserve on-hand inventory to cover repairs, maintenance, emergency work. Capital projects are now installing their units in phases, as most developments have even utilized overhead transformers and underground utility applications to provide service sooner while we wait for pad mount transformers. We've also redeployed underutilized transformers for more efficient utilization of our resources. JEA procurement has responded with increased inventory min-max levels, placed more frequent orders for significantly higher quantities to cover our lead times. We placed several spot buys in the market to help mitigate the both short-term and long-term needs. We diversified our supply base to build system redundancy through backup contracts, including our international vendors. We've expanded our practices of refurbishing older distribution transformers, both internally and externally through suppliers. And lastly, we work with the electrical department to allow suppliers to modify some transformer designs to shorten the manufacturing times and allow less scarce resources, all while maintaining safe, reliable service to our customers. By being flexible and creative, we've been able to continue moving forward, but unfortunately not at the same pace that the community that JEA services. This chart here depicts the recent history of single-phase pad-mounted transformers for orders, receipts, and usages over the past few years. When you look at the units that we've received represented in the blue bars, you see a steady decline after 2019 due to lead times for existing and future orders extended by our suppliers. As our receipts declined, the usage continued, causing our on-hand inventory to be depleted. Additionally, you'll see deliveries slowly picking up in FY22 and most notably in the last few months. This influx has allowed JEA to make significant progress on the unfulfilled demand, bringing us to approximately 550 units needed to fulfill all current and future projects on the books. As we receive the applicable units to cover the unfilled demand, we will continue to serve the community as quickly as possible. It should be noted that historically JEA orders approximately 1,000 units on average annually. Although we continue to partner with developers on insight into the future demand, it's challenging to know the exact demand for future projects at lead times needed to order. To address this, we've used historical data to place orders in anticipation of projects, given the 70-week, 16-month lead times that we're at. This is seen particularly in the FY21 and FY22 in the gray columns, where there are significant orders placed that yielded the uptick in deliveries recently, and we'll continue to see those orders that we've already placed delivering all through FY23 and FY24. So with that said, do you all have any questions for me?
Yes, the chair, just how about all these international suppliers and all the new diversified supply base that we've worked on? How are we doing on getting some of those in?
So we should actually here this month or at the beginning of January start to see some of our first international shipments coming on board. There'll be some additional ones there in what would be our Q2 delivering from some of the other international suppliers. The international suppliers provide us with considerably shorter lead time than our existing supply, so we can react quicker on those. Diversifying supply base, we have essentially 2 suppliers at least. In some instances, we're 3 or 4 suppliers deep with all of our transformers that we buy, and that'll go from pole mounts, single-phase pad mounts, and 3-phase pad mounts.
Where have we been historically before?
So historically, we would partner with a supplier for each one of those segments. So you would traditionally have bought single phase pad mounts from a supplier. You would have bought 3-phase from a supplier, and you would have bought pole mounts from a supplier. Occasionally, you would have seen a second supplier, and then to see that shift where we're at least 2 in every one of them is significant.
That's what I hope we take from this, is that we do diversify that supply chain and not depend on one person or one supplier, because that seems to have hurt us in this situation.
It has, and I guess one of the things that we went into this is that I guess we had traditionally partnered with really great suppliers, so we didn't see all the challenges as early as some utilities had, and that made us a little late to react to it because they had sheltered us from any impacts. I guess if that is a good thing, it's a sort of a bad thing. It is.
As long as we learn from it.
Yes, we have learned from it. We have instituted that. We've also instituted that across a lot of different items, from poles, wire and cable, needed pole line hardware. We've implemented numerous backup suppliers in all of those.
That was the next question, is switch gears and other supplies and so forth. Is there anything else that is you see is critical that we need to be real concerned about?
Not particularly. So wire and cable was a concern. There has been issues out there. We've already migrated to at least 2 suppliers on that. We have 2 primary supplies, and then we also spot buy on that. So traditionally right now we're buying, if you looked at all of our orders, they're probably across 6 different manufacturers for wire and cable. You look at poles, we've migrated to buying from 3 different wood pole suppliers. We moved to 2 different concrete pole suppliers. And then in addition to that, water, wastewater materials, we're now buying from 2 different suppliers. We're buying from a lot of different sources on that. And at the sign of any issues, we continue to react to that.
So one area that is of concern, I think, is meters. And part of the problem with meters is they're proprietary to the system that we are using. So we don't have that flexibility of going out and getting a secondary or a backup or a vendor on that, because the way that our AMI system is set up is that we have partnered with companies, and that's who we have to get our meters from. And if we can't get meters from them, we can't get meters.
And that's electric and water?
Yes, sir.
I would say that the discussion about the pad mounted transformers, this
Right.
chart is a proxy for a bunch of other things.
Right.
And we could put different graphs and charts, and it could be poles, or it could be switchgear, it could be pumps and motors, or meters. There are, I think that I sit on a committee, a national security committee type, and we've been meeting since July each week to review this and so the issue is across the entire electric industry. And the questions we get when we're meeting with some of the federal groups is, well, why didn't you have more vendors? Why didn't you have all the vendors are having the same problem? So in this particular case, having multiple vendors of the 3 that we could have chosen from, when all 3 of them are having the same issue, may not have helped in that specific case. And it also, they wondered, why didn't you have more inventory? And it was because forever we were able to buy it and get it here in 12 weeks. And so we only needed 12 weeks. And when they switched to 70 weeks, very quickly, it threw things into turmoil across the entire industry. We are still meeting internally. So Ray and Ted have got a team that meets and updates us weekly, meets when we need to. The next thing that is a concern, the next biggest thing that's a concern are the meters. And then the timing of all the projects, everything is starting to get pushed out and delayed. So we'll continue to do it. The team is doing it.
The point is well taken as far as all the lessons learned from what is happening. So the diversification of suppliers, modification and standards, but still having good resilient equipment, the way that we treat our projects, all of that is part of this lessons, not only lessons learned, but staying in place as we go forward, that'll help us into the future. And as Ted said, that the latest is meters. I think there's more of a pinch on electric than there is water, but the meter issue. So putting in place strategies to help with that as well. You can power something up without a meter, but then you're going to estimating, which isn't the best solution. So we're looking at strategies as far as what to do with that. And as Jay said, there's a whole team behind this that's addressing this in weekly meetings, but lots of lessons and lots of things to keep in place.
We've all learned a lot of lessons on procurement and subcontractors and suppliers and so forth through this, and I think we just need to keep that in mind.
And
that's all.
We don't know how long, because to catch up, we have to order more. And when you order more and it's all long lead times, then we believe this is several years of time to get out of the.
I would estimate.
Well, that's where I was going to go, which is the unfulfilled demand in 23. So that's using all the orders that we've had over 21, 22. You're forecasting that few delivery in 23. Am I reading that the right way?
No, so unfilled demand is capital projects that have already been put into the system. They're a neighborhood that wants to have power. Those are the units that we would then be putting that we need to fill. So if you would have seen what would be 829 units, an additional 104, if we had the transformer, we would have put it in. And then in addition to that, if we had 454 of the correct transformers right now, we would have already have installed those already this year. That's what that unfulfilled demand is.
Right. I understand that. So what I'm asking is the total ordered in 21 and 22, it would track into total deliveries in 23. So you're saying, I think with this chart, that it's still, even though we've ordered so much, we're still not going to get that much in 23.
You should see significant volumes. I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but it will be higher than any.
These are actual numbers.
These are actual, not forecast.
So when we say FY23, this is what's come in since from October 1 through December.
460 have come in, already arrived this fiscal year.
Yes.
But we've got all these orders outstanding.
Yes.
Okay.
So at some point in time, I may have to find some warehouse space.
Right. We're working on it.
Yeah. We're talking about that.
Thank you. So that's really actual.
These are all these numbers on here.
So it's year to date is really what this is, not for the entirety of the year.
Correct.
Thank you.
And one other thing is we're trying to, and it's a little bit of crystal balling, right? So what's the next thing? Right. We know meters is coming. But what's the next thing after meters, right? And so how do we get as far ahead of the curve on these things as possible? But that's kind of a little elfin magic in there, right?
Yeah, it might be though. Just throwing something out there in light of Moore County in North Carolina, something hard or just force protection infrastructure related for that type. Whatever is something out there, that might be something that could be the next.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
No, we have to pay attention to that too, and understand when things like that happen. Oftentimes there's regulatory changes and then there's operational changes that we should make, whether there are regulatory changes or not. And so we're going to stay up on that. But as that changes, then expectations and what we need. So there'll be some other chart that we also have to forecast how many of whatever makes it stronger and more resilient do we need, and how long does that take?
Sure.
So everything moves. And same thing with all of the discussion about what we need to have in IRP. Everything that used to come short term now is taking a longer time. So the ability for us to move fast on some of those things is going to be difficult. It's going to stretch things out so that goals and targets and things that we're shooting for might be more delayed than what people might want.
So Kurt, I'm thinking back to our July thing we did in DC, and those issues are still alive and well, looking at some standards for production, maybe to expedite, relaxing some standards or whatever. I know those issues are alive, and I don't think any of those have been resolved. Have you heard of any?
No, sir.
Yeah.
They're still working on the Defense Production Act and what that means.
Yeah.
How they can utilize the money. But they haven't announced any solutions or path.
Okay. So.
And we're still in good conversation with the builder community. They're aware. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, they are. I mean, and ideally, we don't have any more, but you know, there are a lot of challenges, and it's like Jay had mentioned, it's when the entire industry causes it. It's not one supplier that you can shift and create a backup supplier. When all suppliers are impacted, it makes it extremely challenging.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay, on the solar power purchase agreement sorted with Gary. Hi, Gary, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning, committee. My name is Gary Baker. I am Senior Director of Energy Operations. I'm here just under 41 years with JEA.
Wow. Longer than you, Marty.
Yes, that's awesome.
Gary, we need to settle down. About time to settle down.
He's about figured it out. He's about figured it out.
So I lead a team, it's a very broad functional team that spans from system operations to substation and protection and control maintenance, to the procurement and the hedging of fuel, as well as the energy market coordination with the Energy Authority, or TEA. As you may know, we are part owner of the company. We were a founding father. That happened in the mid to late 2000s. So I have Mark Anderson on the line. If I have any questions that I can't field, he's certainly capable to help me out during this endeavor. I'll get to it. Today, I'm here to present for your consideration approval for JEA to execute a transaction confirmation with TEA in accordance with JEA board-approved energy market risk policy and the parties' master power purchase agreement. TEA is currently in negotiations with FPL to procure system solar firm energy for use by JEA. Following these negotiations, if approved, JEA will execute a transaction confirmation with TEA. The transaction is intended to increase JEA renewable energy resource portfolio, and it resembles a 150 megawatt solar resource that delivers to our customer on an average 383,000 megawatt hours a year. And this energy is not sensitive to actual weather conditions, cloud cover and the like. The terms of the transaction, the price is approximately $45 plus applicable transportation costs. FPL's current transportation cost to deliver solar power from FPL to JEA is roughly $2,733 per megawatt month. However, under this transaction, FPL is going to file with FERC a tariff modification to at least get 20% reduction in the transmission costs. And we certainly have an out if they don't achieve that 20% reduction in transportation costs. We envision this transaction to start in April of 2023, and it will roll over after 5 years unless terminated by either party. Based on a 20% discount on transportation costs, the transaction value would be approximately $106.6 million or $55.65 per megawatt hour. And also, as part of this deal, JEA would have to increase our credit to FPL at about $8 million. That's not firm as of yet. The benefit of this transaction is to provide a solar bridge to provide additional renewable resources to quadruple JEA's renewable resources today. And it also could provide additional renewable resources for customer programs. In accordance with the Energy Market Risk Policy, JEA's procurement directive exemptions, and the delegation of authority, board approval is required for this transaction. It's over $100 million. Therefore, staff requests the Finance and Operations Committee recommend to the board that the board approve the transaction confirmation between JEA and TEA with an estimated value of $106.6 million. And I'm open to any questions that you might have.
So that 106, the cost, that assumes that we'll get the 20% discount?
That's correct.
Okay.
And what's the role of the Energy Authority? I'm sorry, are they serving as our intermediary? And so this isn't going into their normal pool. This is going to be exclusive to us.
Yes, it'd be a directly assigned transaction to JEA.
TEA is the pass-through.
It's a pass-through. And why do we need the pass-through? I'm just curious.
To do the transaction, it's a two-step transaction. TEA has to do the negotiations with FP&L, and FP&L has to do the filing. So it'll be an agency-to-agency transaction, and then we'll have to do the purchase from TEA. So it'll just be the pass-through.
It's a pass-through. Okay.
It's common, if it's less than a year, this always happens. If it's more than a year, we have the option of using TEA or we can do it ourselves.
And I love that we were saying bridge because it should be a
Yes.
bridge, right? I mean, I think, we talked in the retreat about maybe workshopping solar, and that's a commitment to the community that I'm really interested in as we move forward. So it would be really nice for us to not need a bridge in the future. But I know that's a long way out.
And this gets us, with this comes through, we go from 1% to 4%. Is that right? I think.
Yeah, roughly.
So, I mean, that's getting there in the right direction.
Yeah.
Every journey starts with a step.
Yeah.
But the answer is, I mean, this is a great bridge. The longer term solution is to do it ourselves.
Yes.
Well, I think we're going to hear more about that as we start talking about get to the IRP topic in the next one. But I think this is a great first step.
I've moved to approve it.
Second.
I think approved. Great, good for it, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Make it another 41 years.
Okay, our electric resiliency study. David, you're up.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Finance, Operations, and External Affairs Committees. I'm Peter Melendez. I'm the VP of Planning, Engineering, and Construction. I have the pleasure to lead both the water and electric teams that execute some of our capital projects. This update is part of a broad resiliency initiative within JEA. So just look at it as one of the pieces of the puzzle. The water and wastewater perform a similar assessment to inform plans to provide actionable recommendations on risk and infrastructure improvement. Today, we're providing a quick progress update to the committee of a similar assessment that we're doing in the electric system. The risk to weather events such as flooding and high winds is very real in this region. The team has collected information on key facilities and performed site visits as part of the assessment. So we're going to share some initial results today. We have 4 activities that I want to touch on very briefly and look for questions. The first one that we already progressed significantly was the design standards. The main objective is to identify potential resiliency related gaps, conflicts, or opportunities. What we have learned is that JEA standards are in line of current Florida state building codes, the COJ, storm water regulations, and other regulations. After the initial review, the recommendation is to pursue additional design resiliency criteria
based on climate and site-specific risk. There are no immediate concerns with the current designs that we're using. Nonetheless, the electric industry continues facing more powerful weather events, leading to a specific hardening, designing, and upgrading of facilities. So our consultant is comparing industry practices to guide next steps. While we understand that there are some IEEE standards that guide and direct how we execute work, we are seeing the need to go above and beyond to be able to build some resiliency. More to come on that. Another activity we are performing is an overhead to underground conversion methodology for improving resiliency within the organization. There's an active program through the city to perform overhead to underground conversion. We're aware of that. That has slowed down due to the Patmon conversation we just had about transformers availability. We slow that down to make sure new customers take priority. The intent of this particular task is to create a framework for a utility overhead to underground conversion program. The team, the objective continue being a methodology to support these conversions of the overhead electric distribution to become underground. The team created a strategy to prioritize the electric overhead and underground conversions, right, where it makes sense, with a tool to support the analysis and the ranking. The team continue working on evaluating circuits right now to start testing what we have done and training our personnel to make sure we start using this tool to drive a little more about resiliency with the organization. Additional activities is the development of a cost-benefit evaluation and determine appropriate execution and cost recovery mechanisms. This is part of how do we get better as an organization. The next two tasks are future deliverables. We're not going to touch on a lot of details on it. I look forward to any questions. The consultant is working these concurrently. One is the adaptation and hazard mitigation strategies. We want to establish a roadmap that helps us mitigate this risk that has been identified within our own service territory, and then establish a plan that guides our future resiliency projects or initiatives so we continue with that direction. We expect this to be completed entirely with all the next steps by early summer of 2023. I'm open for questions.
Severe weather, as we learned in Southwest Florida recently, is, could be a 20-foot storm surge. So I want to make sure you really get in there and test the unheard of, right? When 75 was closed down and it's 15 miles away from a body of water, it's just unbelievable. So severe weather, really, really, really please focus on flood, like where that could impact us. And then I'm really interested in overhead to underground. That just has been so cost prohibitive in the past, but I would challenge the team to figure that out. I mean, just
we're going to continue working through it. It's definitely something that has been done and is being done. We're learning quite a bit how to do it better. And that's the ultimate goal that we have this year.
Yeah, it's just the current program, forget the transformer issue, just unfortunately creates drama in neighborhoods where there really shouldn't be drama. I mean, because we put it back on them to get the votes to,
Yeah.
and it's just a passion of mine. So figure it out.
I was going to say the same thing because it's
hard.
It's really tough. And unfortunately, all the old neighborhoods for the most part have the overhead, and they have the big trees too. And obviously overhead and big trees just don't combine. So finding a way to make that more efficient would be
in large part, this is oversimplified, but in large part, the overhead and underground conversion program we have in place now is for aesthetics, and this is for resilience.
This is for resilience.
And that combination of those have to play. So.
Yeah, where you have a major line going down a neighborhood, if you can.
As mentioned,
I think with this, the purpose of, and appreciate all the comments, but the purpose of this matrix is to help give us the tools so we can objectively prioritize and identify. Even in the last storm, Nicole, we had one of our circuits was impacted. That's hard to access as a utility And we identify that as a possibility for, to evaluate. Or if we have customers that are having more outages than they should because of the overhead and what have you. So the utility focus part of this, looking at resiliency, I think is going to be real important. And then I think Pedro mentioned it, but this is under the umbrella more than just weather, all resilience, all resiliency. And we know about the weather impacts, but supply chain that we were talking about and other issues. So water started out with a weather related one. Electric is now doing this, but under that larger umbrella as far as resiliency beyond just weather. Right.
It's one of the frustrations that I have had is that Ray just said water started off with a 1 because of some of the hurricanes 6-7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that study before we were here, and they just looked at water. There's some electric facilities right next to them, and we didn't look at it more broadly. And now we have a team that's actually looking at how do we look at resiliency as a whole, and we're getting better. We're getting better being one organization instead of a whole bunch.
Thank you.
And that, I know I'm speaking the obvious, but on the umbrella, you got that cyber aspect of it too. which
Yeah.
I'm sure you get plenty of help from.
Yeah.
And that said, I don't want to sound cynical, but just from either state or federal level with cyber, especially just if you start getting inundated with too much help, we got to have a plan for how you work with that. All well intentioned, but sometimes it'll be counterproductive because it'll exceed your scope to be able to try and answer everything and feedback for potential regulatory or compliance stuff or whatever, especially in that cyber because it just continues to amp up.
As mentioned again, if resiliency is a puzzle, right? It's a big puzzle that we have to include all aspects of it. So definitely welcome the feedback. Any other questions? I look forward to providing future updates on this as we move forward.
This is very important. It's just more proactive, the better. So that's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere, Pedro. You're part of this next one.
Purpose.
Okay.
Okay, but our next, I'm trying to take over.
No, we're you're on the wrong page. I don't want to wreck your momentum.
Are you going to start this one, Ray?
Thanks, she wants to.
It sounds like it.
Thank you, Chair DeSalvo. And committee members. So this is going to be a team presentation that's going to include my colleague right here, Laura Shepis, and of course Mr. Melendez has a portion of it as well. So we're pleased to present you our latest update on the Electric Integrated Resource Plan. Our previous updates have focused on I'll say more process, the process and the steps in an IRP. This one is going to be more focused on data from the preliminary modeling results because we're now here at this point. So Pedro's going to be presenting that. And probably even more importantly, not only the preliminary data, but what it is telling us. And so we're also going to talk about implementation plan. And we have had a very robust stakeholder engagement as part of this. And Laura's going to speak about those activities as well as our communication strategy as we go forward. So this slide right here is the overview. So let me go back, put this into context a little bit. So the IRP, that's our industry standard. And it's a standard that helps us evaluate long-term supply options. So we selected the consulting firm of Black & Veatch back in 2021, who has widespread industry expertise on conducting IRPs to conduct this IRP on behalf of JEA. So the horizon for the IRP is 30 years. And it's critical as we look at those three things there that we look at this through the lens of reliability, costs, and sustainability. And that needs to be a balanced, holistic look. The process includes identifying the future need, and that future need is going to be based on demand projections that we have going forth, different scenarios. And when I say scenarios, it's basically different future states, how the future is going to look like. And then based on those scenarios, do the modeling exercise to analyze the different variety of solutions or possibilities. This process, as I said, has included our stakeholders. We're going to identify different portfolios, and we're going to develop an action plan to get us to where we need to go. I should have said this. It's important. It's not a one and done. This is going to be an iterative process. So you're going to see us again in 3 to 4 years. And the reason for that, and it's important, while there's things, because we are a utility that we're going to need to implement in the near term as well as the midterm, there are things that we are not aware of as far as technology, new technologies, things that aren't commercially viable at this time. So it's going to be updated every 3 to 4 years, and those things could become part of our preferred portfolio. So not a one and done, going to keep going. So you've seen this before. These are the initial scenarios. Again, scenarios are proxy for possible future states. And Pedro's going to go into that in more depth in his presentation. And I call these initial scenarios because we've gone from these to some different scenarios. So these were the first ones, the first 6 ones. It goes from current outlook, which is basically, I'll call that the status quo. Okay, if you take out the more recent things that we've seen as far as, inflation, costs going up, supply chain, and say like, okay, our demand is going to keep going as we've seen it in the past. Cost is going to keep going as we've seen it, in the past, things like that. That's the current outlook. It doesn't have in there like electrification is going to take off and what have you. So more, I'll call that more status quo, all the way to future net zero, where there are goals in there for renewables, both in, I'll call it midterm as well as long-term. So this covers the gambit. But these have changed. Pedro's going to go into that, where we've combined 2 of these scenarios, as well as we have included what's called a supplemental scenario. And that was based on input from some of our stakeholders. And so with that, I'm not going to go into more of this. I'm going to turn it over to Pedro, so he can go into the data rich portion. He's going to do a great job of that, and also talk about, which I think is critical, going to talk about implementation. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall, for your leadership in this important process. I am humbled by the opportunity entrusted in me and the team to share these current scenarios, initial modeling, and next steps on this journey. Before I continue, please feel free to ask me any questions and stop me along the way, as I have some few things I want to share as we go along the way. I want to make it interactive. I don't want to go too far without acknowledging Melinda Fisher. She's in the back. These are manager of resource planning. She is the champion of this process to maintain it fair, to maintain it organized, and get us going. So thank you for what she's done so far. So I'm going to help share some of these information we have worked together. An integrated resource planning is a journey. It's not a destination. I try to explain it that way at times. I say this while keeping in mind that JEA's responsibility to ensure reliable service. We need to act responsibly towards a sustainable environment. And we have to maintain affordability of electricity now and in the future. This balanced and transparent approach is one that guides our plan and path forward. In collaboration with stakeholders, as mentioned already, the IRP team, ourselves with the consultants and also the stakeholders, finalize the inputs and key variables, and we have moved to an initial modeling of potential futures. You're going to hear me saying potential futures because we can't predict the future, but yes, we can use some data to lead us there and understand that journey. Let's review the current scenarios and initial results. At the center of the IRP, I'd like to start here because I think it is very important. These are our customers. This is a representative of our customers. These graphs are representative of projected peak loads on the left to serve customers at any given moment, and projected energy demand on the right to serve customers with uninterruptible power 24 hours a day. They are very important. Let's do a deeper dive. So I'm going to guide you through it. In light blue is the increased electrification with a steep change noted after 2032, which is indicative of a higher demand considering an industry electric vehicles adoption ranging somewhere between 10 million to 35 million vehicles by 2030. Despite there's uncertainty on that, right? Various automakers are aggressively moving forward in this transition. In yellow, you can observe a similar projection for efficiency plus distributed energy resources and net zero scenarios. In gray, you can see the economic downturn as an input that closely correlates to the 2008 recession, quoted as the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression. We have to test those scenarios as well, right? We need to understand the gamut. In the middle is the supplemental scenario we just discussed and the current outlook mentioned as the status quo that illustrate the baseline of the customers and demands of these scenarios. Let's take a closer look at the potential future scenarios and their key variables. This is a data-rich table. We're not going to go through all of it. I'll start there. But this table illustrates the sensitivities of these potential futures. The modeling tool utilizes with the goal to identify power supply needs under different scenarios. Each scenario has 5 key areas: financial, energy demand, environmental regulations, fuel, and other key considerations. Let's touch on a few scenarios and variables to guide the conversation. The dark yellow column represents an increased electrification scenario. Close to the middle, we can see an energy demand ranging from 2% to 17% by 2030 and 2050, respectively. This stretch is an input to determine potential needs to serve plug-in and fleet vehicles within the JEA service area. The green column represents the future net zero scenario, representative of environmental considerations. This future scenario is the only one with potential clean energy regulatory penalties of $30 per ton with a 5% escalation. This scenario also establishes clean energy long-term objectives of 40% by 2030 and 100% by 2050 to better inform the energy supply needs and alternatives.
Hey, excuse me. So that one there, I think this is key. So it's an assumption, but how feasible an assumption is it? And I'm not questioning it, but I just, so 100% clean energy renewable by 2050. It's an assumption, but how feasible is it?
We'll get into that a little later. So I'll give you the tool is actually right. It's a software tool. You're entering data. It doesn't recognize the specific inputs from is a practical to be done. That's what analysis need to take into play.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that as I go forward with the presentation. Some scenarios do indicate things that are feasible. We just need to work towards them.
Right.
But it's not, the tool doesn't say, yes, all these can be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's more to give you some indication, some result that you need to analyze to make good path forward decisions.
But it is one of the concerns.
Yeah.
Is and just show some of this, the amount of land and capacity that we need.
Sure.
So on that, the transaction that you just approved is a 25% factor. So to be able to supply the energy,
Mm-hmm.
nuclear is 90%. So you get a lot more energy out of nuclear than this. Your question is a big
Mm-hmm.
question on the back end. How do we do it? Should we do it? How do we make that work? So.
As I go forward, I probably will be able to bring you some more clarity. We can come back to make sure that we understand how this plays out in the process. So, any other questions before we went over the scenario for clean energy. All the scenarios have key inputs, right? That includes fuel cost variability, which we know we have some data points and sources that kind of give us some what could happen, top end, low end. We provided some supplemental material and that construction costs to invest in energy resources And also we have a what if scenario or key input or retirement of a north side generation to understand the power supply needs for all JEA customers. We're not making decisions. We're simply guiding and providing input that stretches this longer term from this horizon of 30 years and tell a story with us. So let's review some common resources additions across these scenarios. I like it to call it, they begin with the end in mind so you understand what we're seeing before we get through a deeper dive. After the initial modeling, we're seeing common resources additions. What do we need to add to our system? In 5 of 6 scenarios, 300 megawatts of solar appears as needed around the 2026 timeframe. As you know, JEA has sites for development that we'll go over as part of this review. 300 megawatts of solar will represent up to 6% of energy demand in our system. We also see 750 megawatts to 975 megawatts of solar appearing in 4 of the 6 scenarios around 2030 timeframe. This do not appear in the current outlook or economic downturn. I think you understand why. These additions will represent approximately 15% to 19% of additional energy demand. Combined, top and the second one, these total up to 25% of solar additions resulting from these IRP process. To put things into perspective from a feasibility, I think to answer your question, Gerald, 1 megawatt of solar may use 6 to 8 acres of land. This 1,275 megawatts will likely require 7,500 to 10,200 acres and additional infrastructure also to interconnect these resources to the transmission system. We'll talk a little bit more about more details on this, but I want to kind of put things in perspective to paint out a better view into this.
Or rooftops.
On
warehouse rooftops.
Yeah, there's right, technology continue advancing, opportunities continue coming, and that's what I want to deliver. We're not making decisions, we're illustrating some practical views into this.
Sure.
Another resource to meet capacity needs is a new natural gas facility, which appears in 5 of the 6 scenarios. Results indicate the need of up to 570 megawatts of combined cycle facilities around 2029, based on the inputs and the variables that we have gone through. Let's look deeper into the modeling results. This slide represents reliable service, which is key to operating the system. I'd like to start by sharing that these are potential futures. You heard me saying again, you're going to hear me because I want to guide us through this. That is not, we're not going to select one versus the other. So I'm not going to talk about specific one versus the other, but I'm going to share some takeaways. The results need to be looked broadly and individually to learn and guide any action plan. The yellow represents natural gas to achieve energy demand needs. Vogtle is shown in light green with a contract expiration in 2040. And the tool looks to replace these resources with either renewables, shown in green, which are solar or battery, or market purchases. It is important to highlight that the initial modeling is using PPA for solar with what's known as energy supply for JEA. During this process, we learned that under some scenarios, the modeling reveals potential reliability on unserved customer situations. To address these, the tool added resources such as natural gas or external resources to ensure reliability. The tool actually has the ability to do that. Further analysis and system studies are needed to better understand the situations. How do we integrate it into the system to ensure reliability and keep that in the forefront? I'm going to pause for a second, make sure that we are good with that. So let's discuss sustainability as an environmental specific view for the tool. The good news, it's important that we see that JEA has made progress to reduce CO2 emissions from 15 tons in 2005, as seen in this graph, to roughly 5 tons in future years. Interesting to note that that remaining flat in future years with higher energy demand is a positive indication. You're asking more from the system, but yet you are actually able to maintain that. because of the work that the JEA system operations team, Gary and the rest of the team have done. Nonetheless, there are future scenarios that provide a downward trajectory of CO2, as you can see, and others are showing potential upward trends. Let's describe what that is the case with an example. The electrification scenario shows upward CO2 emissions after 2040, primarily because the model removes non-CO2 emitting resources such as Vogtle and determines the need to use more of the existing JEA assets and add capacity type of resources to meet higher demand of energy with new available resources, such as natural gas. Another view is the net zero scenario, where the tool adds significant amount of solar and battery resources to solve for these future scenario, showing a downward CO2 emission projection. It is important to mention that the modeling tool does not consider geographical location, the topology of the system, the density of the transmission and distribution system. With that said, analysis, as asked by the general, and interpretation of the result in a more practical sense helps guide action to meet a balanced environmental objectives. Let me put it into perspective a little bit more. By 2040, new solar and battery additions are ranging from 300 megawatts to 3,825 megawatts of solar and up to 8,300 megawatts of JE-owned batteries to meet the system demands to achieve a 1.9 tons of CO2, which is a representation of 85% reduction from the 2005. Very positive, very good. In practical sense, this is around 25 to 30,000 acres of land, 6 to 8 acres per megawatt. The city of Jacksonville Beach, you all know around, it's very close, is 23,000 acres. Panama City, Florida, which I haven't had the privilege to visit, hear a lot about it, is 34,000 acres. So when you look to your question, General, about the practicality of it, we understand that it is a challenge. As we continue going forward, we'll continue analyzing, we'll continue making good decisions. But I want to put things in perspective. To be able to achieve that level of 100%, it makes it very challenging. We're not saying it's impossible. We're saying we're going to work towards that future, taking some steps.
So I should have asked this earlier. So there was assumption made that once Vogel's done, 2040, another option was having some type of nuclear power. So that was we're not going to go down that road, I guess, correct?
The tool utilizes commercially available resources.
Okay.
Right. And the things that are, I'll call it, viable and executable in these futures. In future IRPs, as we continue on doing this in 3 to 4 years, technology advances. We're all hearing a lot about hydrogen. I read a report yesterday. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'd like to continue seeing what the future will bring. We'll probably continue looking at those alternatives to continue making decisions longer term. At this moment, to answer more directly your question, we're utilizing what we know and what we can and what we have access to in the market.
Okay.
I think that's a really good question and really great response, Pedro. And that goes back to the updates every 3 to 4 years. But also, and Pedro's going to get to this, and there's things because reliability, affordability, system that we are going to need to implement. And one of those you've already heard, we're not waiting for the IRP to be completed. Gary speaking on the transaction with TEA on the solar, and there's other things. But where I was going with that is even in those things that we implement or come back with our recommendations, they're going to have an eye for the future. So if it's a combined cycle, if hydrogen indeed is in the game 10 years, that can be converted for that. So we're always going to have a mind for the future with that. Go ahead.
And also transitions, right? Ensure that decisions are transitionable in the right direction. Let's take a look at cumulative cost as another view. To better understand this graph, right? We're illustrating things sometimes it's a little hard. I would like to describe each cost contribution. These are cumulative costs of fuel with variability impacting each scenario based on market projections and power purchase agreements. O&M includes fixed and variable costs for the resources owned and operated by JEA. Capital cost represents the new JEA additions of, as the scenario indicates, like a natural gas plant, and also energy storage assets, which is one of the scenarios asked for that, as applicable by the scenario. Costs include known improvement to efficiently run the existing fleet. This cost projections do not include electric system upgrades to ensure reliability with optimal use of the needed resources. More analysis, more reviews, more discussions on these topics. You may notice that the future net zero has significant O&M, which is associated with the potential regulatory cost of $30 per ton with escalation, and also a high capital cost, mostly related to batteries. Batteries, be able to own them is pretty expensive, plus the natural gas combined cycle plant that is being indicated by the study. At a high level, cumulative cost through 2050, because this is basically amortized alone to be accumulated, is a good view. We're ranging from $40 billion up to $87.4 billion. These costs are being revisited by the team. We're challenging them. I say, okay, there's some things in here we need to break up a little bit more to get a better sense of what we're seeing, with additional sensitivities and allocations to make sure that the dollars go to the right buckets, to better understand the variability for each scenario, and continue looking at it as a big picture. As mentioned, the IRP team is working towards finalizing the modeling, which includes these refinements, and we expect that to be finalized by next month. As the journey continues, we would like to provide also an update in implementation activities, but I want to pause to make sure these three items that we touched, reliability, sustainability, and affordability, are clear in more details as we go. All right, let's go over the implementation steps. Call to action. There are 4 concurrent initiatives that we're working on right now. I want to provide an update. So our consultants will continue finalizing the modeling and analysis by the end of January, followed by a recommendation and a final report. In collaboration, we will align these recommendations with an action plan, continue making that adjustments, make sure we all play our role. Next month, we're initiating an RFP to develop 4 JEA sites via PPA or design build with a contracted O&M, thanks to the IRA that actually creating a level field for everybody, to interconnect these sites to JEA system. We're projecting 2026 in service dates, contingent to market conditions, supply chains, and a path forward. That's our target, which is in addition to what was presented as a bridge earlier by Mr. Baker. This is some actionable activities we are doing as a team. For these RFP, we're partnering with the Energy Authority to leverage their expertise in this area of executing RFP, whether as a PPA or now they are actually helping some design builds. So we're actually partnering with those that have that depth and breadth experience. Another activity we started a 10 to 12 week feasibility process to identify design specifications for a new natural gas combined cycle plant and prepare for an RFP. And also for the Florida PSC need for power process, which we understand those are steps we need to get ready for, so we're acting on them. And this feasibility process is divided in 2 phases. The first deliverable is early February timeframe. And from there, we'll move to the next one, which is the RFP, as we continue learning what we can actually in practice be able to do, where we'll need to do it, and continue with that open and transparent conversation. Lastly, but not the least important, I'll say, they're all important. We started a comprehensive transmission system analysis to identify capital improvement to align with the long-term resources needs, right? The tool actually is able to make some determinations. We need to talk about implementation of these effectively. That analysis and the results will be included in the 10-year site plan filing that we have in April, part of the PSC process, to understand what are the projections long term of what changes we need to make to our system to adopt and transition these resources.
So just so I'm straight on the combined cycle feasibility, develop RFP, request for proposal?
Correct.
Okay, so does that, and when I hear that, I mean, that sounds like a pretty formal step in going down that path, or is this still more of a notional exploratory type thing?
The step of the feasibility study is to understand being able to execute that here.
Okay.
The infrastructure that is needed, some of the design specs. Is it gonna be 570 or is it gonna be 420,
I see.
right? That's the feasibility. The RFP step is just getting us ready as a team, as an organization, to build a necessary team, to understand the processes, to understand the timelines, when we can execute it. We're not going to trigger that. We would come and have the conversation and continue with the conversation. When is the appropriate time to do it? It's just some steps. It takes time to prepare. We believe that we need to start getting ready for that activity. To understand the market and what can and cannot be done, definitely there's a lot of questions that may come up out of that. But we're not executing it. We're preparing ourselves for it. Is that good? It's a very comprehensive, is a large initiative. Requires a lot of input, a lot of conversations. We want to make sure it's transparent and we can be prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. And then are there some, not to get off track, but from a human resources perspective, as you're going through this, I don't know if there's some expertise that maybe JEA has or maybe it doesn't, and then just that human dimension on as you go down this path, making sure that there's consider those implications on, do you have the right expertise and maybe not, I don't know, but it's that human resource aspect.
That's when you are touching exactly what the feasibility study is going to determine. What do I need to execute on?
Okay.
And then the RFP preparation process is going to help in what type of resources do I need to ensure I successfully execute this. We actually partnering with some contractors. Black and Beach is involved in this particular activity that I'm talking about. It's a different team. We are other organizations that I either have access to. We're going to go through a process, formal process that we have to ensure we have the right people involved in this process, internally and also externally. This is there are a lot of pieces of this puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, I'm glad that you asked that question, because that's basically the RFP preparation. It's like, who do I need? What kind of expertise do I need as a team to help us ensure we're making the best steps forward in this process?
Yeah.
Good. One other thing I wanted to mention is as well. I said in the beginning that there are things that JEA is implementing. That's what this kind of highlights. You heard from Gary on the transaction vis-a-vis T with FPNL, and we are also having discussions with through our industry associations to partner on additional solar. Because it doesn't have to be here within Duval County, it can be elsewhere. And there's power and economics and what have you to partner with others. That hasn't come to fruition, but I wanted to make you all aware of that as well. So, and Mr. Erickson there is our lead on those partnering discussions. So more to come on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm open for many questions, but I would like thank for the opportunity.
I'm sorry, that was my phone.
Thanks for the opportunity to provide an update. I look forward to continue the discussions. Now I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you, committee members. We have had 6 of the 8 stakeholder meetings, and yes, everyone has included a very open and robust discussion. In fact, last time we presented a lot of data and charts to you today. The stakeholders got even more data and charts behind those. I think those were in your supplemental package. So we spent 2.5 hours. We did some bonus round time to really let people look at what the computational model is churning and putting together and putting out across these 6 scenarios. So The modelers are off working over their holiday break. That computer's got smoke coming out the top, and there will be even more results and more refined results as they run additional sensitivities across those 6 scenarios. Still with the framing that Pedro described, right? The model's still not going to understand geography or topology or the intricacies of interconnecting to an ever-changing transmission system around us, but we will have a finer look across the 6 scenarios. So I expect another data-intensive 7th stakeholder meeting. That will be on February 2nd, noon to 2. Here, I think in CC4. That location has worked pretty well. Then, don't let me leave out the board meetings. Every board meeting, January, February, March, April, we will bring pieces to you that we think are going to meet your needs, to be informed and be very conversant in this process, especially as we come around the corner into mid-May. We promised 8 stakeholder meetings and we are delivering 8. Last time in November, we asked stakeholders if they would be all right if we made what is already a public on the website meeting even more public. So we think in mid-May, we will present the final IRP report in something that is even more accessible to the community. And then that will let the board discussion continue on whether or not to have goals and what those goals might look like. So those are our next steps. A lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
A few sentences.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. So thank you for that. And I mean, Logan mentioned earlier that this has been kind of a learning opportunity. You know, I would imagine that all of the stakeholders are saying that. I mean, they've been engaged and they're excited about this process. You know, just thinking through that it's great to have an expanded public forum in May. You know, is there a way to continue to drive this message out? I'm going to dabble in your committee, and I'm on finance and external affairs. I mean, take it on the road, to do Rotary meetings, to do chamber updates, I mean, I think that we have a great opportunity to communicate this message. So I would challenge you to do that if you haven't already.
That is great. And Jay may not know it, but I scheduled him for one yesterday.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I think it's ongoing too. It's not, May isn't the end.
Right.
We will continue to discuss it and be open about it, really the same way that we're being open about the rates and talking about things ahead of time and letting people know this is what we're thinking about. And so more and more and more.
We're having internal road shows as well. Victor over there is coming to different departments to talk about the change in the electric rates. And so that same strategy on the IRP, the internal road show, because we want to make sure our employees are just as informed.
Absolutely. Great point. Great point. This is a heavy lift, and it's been a heavy lift, and I think it's perfectly timed. So I just want to say thank you for your work. It's a lot to absorb. I will tell you, just reading it, you've put a lot of work to get it to this point. But it's just a lot.
Well, we thank you for the support and the questions because they always make us better.
Yeah.
It's encouraging watching the process and hearing from Logan and the others about that they feel like they've been part of it. I hope we can communicate that well. I mean, it's hard for people to understand exactly how much input has come from the community and stakeholders. And I don't know how that gets across.
Having the stakeholder conversations has been very fulfilling. That too has made us better.
Has the stakeholder participation stayed consistent, or like in meeting 3, did you have more, or is it a closed set once you started?
It's been pretty consistent.
Okay.
We've had really good participation, especially given people's schedules, and the level of conversation we have never had a dull meeting.
You want it that way. If there's no conversation, then that means
we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, it's not just the meeting as well. We have open channels to the stakeholders. We have an email address. We've asked for comments. The stakeholders have asked each other to submit comments to us in more detail. So as we move down the road, it won't just be the comments from the meeting. It will be the comments that come into us in detail as well.
So it's even more interactive than just the meetings.
Exactly.
That's encouraging.
Have we talked to any other utility doing the same thing? Just out of curiosity? Okay.
I know that we've gotten requests from other utilities, and I think one even participated in the last stakeholder meeting. Gainesville.
Gainesville came over.
That's going to be implementing an IRP to see how this was.
We've spoken to OUC last spring as it was sort of gearing up. I was able to sit with some people from Georgia Power and take a closer look at how they were working on their IRP. And they do have to do them every 3 years.
Wow.
For their Public Service Commission.
Okay.
And we've had not only Black and Beach with experience, but several of our team members experience, including Ted, Laura, and I have served in a couple of different capacities on the TVA IRP working group, which was the stakeholder engagement group of theirs. And so it's very, to do it well and do it right is very detailed, which is what you.
And it's a lot.
And we have to keep on updating and looking out longer term. It really gives us a reasonably good model for us to think about how do we look out longer term for other things. And it's a new thing to have the stakeholders.
What was the last time we did?
2018.
There was one done in 2018, that wasn't it?
Okay.
We've done them before.
Just curious.
And we did a water IRP that we completed, and the involvement with the public was on the back end after we finished. We said, here's what we've done. I think we're going to be in a much better place at this point. While it might not look exactly like any individual stakeholder might want it, all of that input will make us be stronger and better in the long run.
Good. Great. Well, thank you. I mean, this whole effort is, everybody appreciates how hard this is. Good. Okay, I think any other business or any other things to be discussed?
Can I ask a quick question about the small and emerging business quarterly report?
Yes.
Procurement, okay, good. There was a supplier survey that was provided, and I was a little disappointed when you dig into it. I'm very proud of our results. So, yeah, we're doing a great job. We're over goal, and I'm based on eligible spend, which is great. But there were only 17 people that responded to the supplier survey, and most of them didn't really participate because we had on average 7 people answer each question. Can we double down and do a different outreach on that? Because I think they've got powerful voices. We had 93 contracts through the year, and we had 17 people respond, but really 7 people participated.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's just such an important part of what we do. That's it, sorry.
No, thank you, Marty. And let me ask John Baker or Tom Van Osdale if you have any things to talk about.
No, sir, not at this time, but I appreciate you asking.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, that said, our next Finance and Operations Committee meeting will be March 10th. Then next, I'm just seeing here, next External Affairs Committee is April 18th
Right.
for that. But we'll see everybody in January at the board meeting and have a great holiday. You know, one thing I forgot to mention, I just, because it was on the LinkedIn, on the JEA thing, the JEA ductile competition.
Oh,
The water. Oh my gosh.
The pipe.
Yes.
1 minute and 8 seconds. That was like a LA, those folks that going on rapid film. That was incredible. Great job by them.
All female.
That was, there's two different ones.
Well,
The
the
pipe
two-
tapping contest
I'm
was
sorry,
the
that's-
men's group, and then
Something about the
we
hydrant.
had the hydrant hysteria that the women's team won.
Oh, so they did win that one. Oh, that's great.
We've got
Yeah.
a couple of teams going to Toronto
Yeah.
this,
For state,
to
I mean,
the-
for
from the
international.
state for the international competition in June.
In June.
Thankfully in June.
Yeah.
There right now.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Well, this meeting's adjourned.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you. We can put our orders from Alston Bill.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
A lot of information.
Yeah.